Rumble has a lot of hit combos. Straight, uppercut straight, straight kick, and straight uppercut, just to name a few. And all of them serve a purpose, moving a structure quickly towards your opponent. But what if that's not fast enough?
You don't just want your rocks to roll at your enemy, you want them to fly. So you think, for hours, about how to send cubes and balls at your enemies faster than a speeding disc, all to no avail. Nothing works. Explode isn't consistent, hit combos peter out after suck, and charge just isn't quite fast enough. Eventually you give up. But then, you load into a fateful match. What the fuck? What you just saw was a Railgun, Rumble's fastest move. It's got dozens of variants, but the most common to see is, unsurprisingly, the standard Railgun. It'll double the speed of any ungrounded structure shot through it. But how does it work, I hear you asking? Simply, when two structures collide, they undergo hit stop, a state in which they have a lot of interesting properties. For a very brief moment, their momentum is paused. Each object halts in place for a second, then either breaks or continues unabated. This doesn't seem very useful at first, until you ask yourself what happens when a structure collides with two other structures instead of one. While last time, it simply stopped and resumed movement normally, now it will stop and resume movement twice at once. Of course, 0 times 0 is 0, so the structure halts as normal, but after, it suddenly has its momentum added back twice. Now, when you inevitably try a railgun, it'll probably... Yeah, it stopped, didn't it? That's called a dead stop, since it can, and will, stop any structure dead in its tracks. You can stop a cliff cannon with a disc if you have good enough timing, but it's more than that. Dead stops are the result of a failed railgun, because when a structure is in hit stop, it becomes very briefly invulnerable. Other structures will stop on it, and players will face right through it. This means you can use structures in hit stop for defense, as a dead stop, or for ricochets at crazy angles, and you can even use hit stop to pass right through a solid rock. So, that's what a railgun is and isn't. But how can you ever use one in a match? After all, they take so much precision and have such a long setup. Well, there's been a lot of thought put into that by some of the pretty brilliant members of the community. A couple ways to perform railguns faster include using balls instead of pillars, slamming down from the top instead of the side, and turning the setup into more of a move, a series of motions that can consistently produce railguns rather than a slow, painstaking setup period. Now, don't get me wrong, the moves are still slow, but they're not meaningfully slower than any given flick or volatile setup, and unlike volatile, they don't practically require a certain shift stone. Finally, here's how to actually perform some of these techniques. Obviously, we'll start with the railgun in a few variations. First up on the chopping block is a standard railgun. It looks simple, but there's a bit of nuance to it. First, though, let's define some terms. These are just my own, so I can't guarantee anyone else will understand you if you use them, but I find that they help. First of all, the structure that you want to hit your opponent with is called the bullet. The two pillars are called the rails, and parts of the rails facing the bullet, or vice versa, is the face. That done? I can explain. A railgun occurs when your bullet collides with both rails simultaneously. If you're even slightly off, it'll dead stop, and if you're a little more off, they'll just break. A dead stop occurs only when the bullet collides with the first rail and second rail so closely together that it's still in hit stop for the second collision. Keep in mind, that means that the bullet is in hit stop at the start of the collision, not the rail. What you want to do when performing a railgun is make sure that the rail face and bullet face are parallel. If they are, then you're good to go. You then just need to break the rails on the bullet by sending the bullet ungrounded straight through them, as shown in this diagram. We'll do the rest sort of rapid fire. Another kind of railgun is called the Devil's Rods. Just throw a held boulder at a whole bunch of pillars like so. For a dead stop, just don't line up the faces quite right. This is most easily done by just moving the second rail a little. For a dead stop ricochet, launch a disc and then a speed disc as fast as possible together. The timing changes based on how long a distance you're firing from, but you really should be aiming for a flat structure. If you do it right, the speed disc will bounce off, even if you're at an incredibly deep angle. For a phase, grab a ball with your right or left hand, depending on which one your main hand is, and then rotate it behind you, and then bring your arm in through a dash as you touch the wall. This way, the ball will break as you touch it, causing hit stop and letting you phase through. This is substantially harder than on host than on client.
Hey, as far as I can remember, that is everything. If I've made any mistakes, let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to respond. There's always more to learn here. With that, though, yeah, thank you so much for watching, and please leave some video ideas in the comments. Really, I need them. Yeah, that's all. I'll see you around.